Sound. Without it, you wouldn't be hearing this video and learning the valuable information to come. Sound has been a crucial key to human evolution via communication and the spread of ideas. But what about the science behind sound? How do humans process sounds? Or what's that thing that you kind of know about, the Doppler effect? Also, how do animals process sounds differently than humans? All good questions that we will attempt to answer. First, let's discuss the mechanics of sound. Sound travels in waves. This idea dates back to at least 240 BCE when three separate men, all living in roughly the same time period, Greek philosopher Chrysippus, Roman engineer Vitruvius, and Roman philosopher Boethius, all three men independently theorized that sound took a wave form. And they're right, although we now know a bit more than they did. A sound wave is a pattern of disturbance caused by the movement of energy traveling through a medium. And though we think of sound as moving through air, it can move through other mediums like water and steel too. Some mediums absorb the waves and thus they cannot be heard. The source of a sound wave is a vibration. Human vocal cords can cause this vibration, as can a ringing telephone, dropping of a book, etc. The vibration disturbs the particles surrounding it, usually the air particles, and causes the disturbed particles to then vibrate. Then those vibrating particles disturb their neighbors, which causes them to vibrate, and so on. Think of it like dropping a stone into water. Sound waves are different from light waves because sound is a wave of actual matter, which are the vibrating particles. The waves carry the sound energy from its source outward in all directions, and the further you are from the source, the less intense it is. These vibrations come at different rates, and the different rates produce different sounds. Seems logical enough. The properties of the sound wave are important to the sound produced, so let's take a step back and look at the different parts of the sound wave. So a sound wave is a longitudinal wave that can be reduced to a sinusoidal curve. The curve has several different properties. The wavelength is the length of one cycle of sound. The period is the time for the wavelength to pass a point before the next wave. The longer the wave is, the lower the pitch of the sound it is. The frequency is the number of waves that pass a point each second. The higher the frequency, the higher the pitch. Frequency and period are closely related. The amplitude is how much energy the wave has and represents the loudness of the sound, and is how far up or down the curve travels from the point of normal or ambient noise. The higher the amplitude, the louder the noise is. Loudness is measured in decibels and directly refers to the energy produced in the wave. The sound power is the intensity of the sound heard, and this refers to the energy rate, which is the measure of sound energy per time. The way this is determined is using a complex equation relating to the decibel scale. This is a bit too in-depth for our purposes. Something to keep in mind is that sound is also a pressure wave, which means it is a repeating pattern of high and low pressure regions that are caused by the vibrations. As it moves, the waves actually change the air pressure, and this is one common way that sound is measured. Pressure changes are measured and they subtract the pressure from the ambient room with no sound wave from the pressure vibrations. The speed of sound is another interesting aspect to study. The average sound wave at room temperature through the air is 330 meters per second or 740 miles per hour. To calculate the speed of sound of a given medium, though, we use the equation speed is equal to wavelength times frequency. This means that the speed depends how quickly the wave passes through the specific medium. This is an inherent property of the material. It is a constant. The Newton-Laplace equation gives us that c is equal to the square root of k over p, where c is equal to velocity, k is equal to the elastic modulus, or the stiffness of the medium, and p equals density. Temperature also slightly affects k and p. These are the general mechanics of sound. How humans and animals relate to these waves and processes is a little bit different.
Have you ever noticed that as a fast-moving ambulance passes you, the pitch of the siren abruptly drops? At first, the siren is coming towards you when the pitch is higher. After passing you, the siren is going away from you and the pitch is lower. This is known as the Doppler effect. The Doppler effect is an increase or decrease in sound wave frequency as the source or the listener, or both, move toward or away from each other. As the ambulance gets closer and closer, the sound waves from the siren are compressed and frequency increases. This causes a higher pitched sound. After it has passed, however, the sound waves can spread back out, returning to a lower pitch. The Doppler effect also applies to other forms of waves. For example, light waves experience the Doppler effect. Light from moving objects will have different wavelengths and frequencies depending on their direction of movement relative to the viewer. This is especially useful in astronomy, as scientists are able to tell if a star is moving closer or farther from Earth. If a star is moving away, light frequency is decreased, emitting waves closer to the red side of the visible light spectrum. If a star is moving closer, light frequency is increased, emitting waves closer to the blue side of the visible light spectrum. These phenomena are referred to as redshift and blue shift.
In order for humans to understand sound, the sound waves must be processed by the three parts of the ear. The three parts are the outer ear, the middle ear, and the inner ear. The outer ear consists of the ear flap, which protects the eardrum, and the ear canal. The ear canal is approximately 2 centimeters long and channels the sound into the middle ear. Hair and wax line the edges of the canal in order to keep debris out of the ear. In the ear canal, sound is still in a pressure wave. The ear canal is capable of amplifying sound with frequencies of 3,000 Hz. Next is the middle ear. The middle ear consists of the eardrum and the ossicles. The middle ear is an air-filled cavity that is connected to the mouth by the eustachian tube, which is used to equalize pressure within the cavity. When a person has a cold and the tube is clogged, the ears can't equalize, which creates earaches. Inside the cavity of the middle ear is the eardrum. The eardrum is a very durable, tightly stretched membrane that vibrates when it is hit by approaching sound waves. The eardrum is connected to the ossicles, which are tiny bones that amplify the vibration of the sound waves. The eardrum is connected to the hammer, which is connected to the anvil, which is then connected to the stirrup. Because the three bones in the eardrum are connected, the bones vibrate at the same frequency as the wave, and each bone amplifies the vibrations. The last bone, the stirrup, is connected to the fluid of the inner ear. The force of the vibrations on the stirrup is 15 times larger than the force of vibration on the eardrum, which is what enables humans to hear fainter sounds. Once the sound travels through the middle ear, it reaches the inner ear. The inner ear consists of the cochlea, a snail-shaped structure the size of a pea, which is filled with a water-like fluid and 20,000 hair-like nerve cells. As the compressional waves move from the middle ear through the oval window and into the inner ear, the nerve cells start to move. Each cell is fitted with a certain frequency, and when the cell matches the frequency of the sound wave, it vibrates with a larger amplitude. These increased vibrations of the nerve cells send electrical impulses to the auditory processing center, which is the part of the brain that processes the impulses and understands the loudness and pitch of sound. This is how the human ear processes sound waves. Sometimes something goes wrong with the ear's function, and it causes hearing impairment. Hearing impairment or loss can happen as a result of age, genetics, or be caused at birth. There are three main types of hearing loss. These are conductive, sensorineural, and mixed hearing loss. Conductive hearing loss is a problem with the outer or middle ear. It is usually mild and temporary impairment and can be medically treated. The impairment usually occurs at birth because of malformed parts of the ear. Other causes are tiny holes in the eardrum, wax in the ear canal, or scar tissue, or otosclerosis, which is the abnormal growth of bone in the middle ear, restricting the movement of the ossicles. Another type of hearing loss is sensorineural hearing loss. It can be hereditary or it can be caused in utero. It can also be caused by severe head damage or constant exposure to loud noises. Sensory neural hearing loss means that the cochlea doesn't work properly, often because the nerve cells are damaged. It can also occur because of a problem with the connection between the cochlea and the brain. Auditory neuropathy, a type of sensory neural hearing loss, means that the cochlea functions properly, but the nerve receptors of the brain do not. This type of hearing loss is often permanent. It can affect one ear or both ears and can affect speech. Mixed hearing loss is a combination of conductive and sensory neural hearing loss. Hearing loss can also happen as a result of severe diseases. In order to test the types of hearing loss, the tuning fork test is done. If the tuning fork can't be heard in the air, the tuning fork is placed on the hard bone behind the ear. If it is heard, the hearing loss is conductive. If it still isn't heard, the loss is sensory neural. Levels of hearing loss are measured in decibels. 0 decibels represents the normal hearing threshold, also known as the 0 decibel hearing level. Categories of hearing loss are measured in increments of 500, 1000, and 2000 Hertz. Hearing aids are often used to help people with mild to severe hearing loss. A hearing aid is made up of a microphone to sense ambient sound, an amplifier, and a tiny speaker to project amplified sound into the ear canal. The modern hearing aid uses an electret condenser microphone, which is small, sturdy, and has a high signal-to-noise ratio. The frequency range of the microphone is usually 100 to 10,000 Hertz. A basic hearing aid is sometimes called a linear circuit aid. It amplifies any ambient sound that reaches it, but the amplification is fitted to the individual user, so the hearing aid usually amplifies high frequencies rather than low frequencies. For users with presbycusis, the progressive loss of high-frequency hearing that happens as a result of age, high frequencies are amplified with very little amplification of the bass. There are 4 styles of wearing hearing aids: in the ear, behind the ear, in the canal, completely in the canal, and worn on body, which is used for profound hearing loss. Another type of hearing aid uses audio compression. It adjusts the degree of amplification based on the loudness of the sound, with louder noises needing less amplification. The compression happens usually at either the microphone or the speaker. A more specific type of compression is adaptive compression, which compresses different types of sounds. There are 2 classifications of adaptive compression: ASP circuits, which monitor sounds and automatically change the degree of amplification, the output, and the frequency response, and KAMP circuits, which detect and amplify only quiet sounds and leave louder sounds alone. Digital programmable hearing aids, which use a digital signal processor, are currently being created and developed. This type of hearing aid is programmed to fit individual needs more closely. Steps have been made to program these hearing aids to more closely pick up the characteristics of human speech and amplify human communication more than other sounds. Another type of hearing aid is cochlear implants, which are still in the experimental stage. As I mentioned before, the nerve cells on the basilar membrane in the cochlea vibrate in response to specific frequencies. A cochlear implant is used to recreate the electrical impulses that the nerves send to the brain and create an understanding of speech patterns. The implant is surgically placed under the skin behind the ear. There are 4 basic parts to the implant: the microphone, which picks up sound from the environment; the speech processor, which organizes sounds that are picked up from the microphone; a transmitter and receiver/stimulator, which receives signals from the processor and converts them into electrical impulses; and electrodes, which provide stimulating electrical impulses to specific electrodes inside the cochlea based on analysis of the incoming sound. These impulses stimulate the nerves the way that they are stimulated when a person hears normally. According to the National Institute on Deafness and Other Communication Disorders, the cochlear implant does not restore or create normal hearing, but it gives the individual a useful auditory understanding of the environment and helps him or her to understand speech. Extensive post-operational training and therapy is required, but many people who have gotten cochlear implants have developed speaking skills.
It could be called a modern-day miracle. Watch as this little boy hears his father's voice for the first time.
Hi, Grayson. Talk to him, Daddy.
Daddy loves you. Daddy loves you. Daddy.
Yes, here.
Can you hear Daddy? Before this moment, Grayson Clamp had never heard a sound. That's you. Grayson.
Hearing is essential for survival. A fact that shows just how essential the sense of hearing is to living creatures is that although scientists have discovered several blind species, they have yet to discover any that are naturally deaf. Not all animals have ears, though. Only vertebrates have ears, while invertebrates use other types of sense organs to detect the vibrations known as sound waves. Mammal ears are usually visible, while birds, fish, and reptiles generally do not have visible outer ears. Different physical traits allow vertebrates to hear different frequencies. A larger pinna helps funnel sound towards the eardrum. Once sound arrives at the eardrum, the membrane vibrates. If an animal has a thin eardrum membrane, it is able to vibrate faster, hearing higher frequencies. This is the case for animals such as bats. Elephants, however, have a very thick eardrum, which generally vibrates slowly, better suited for hearing lower frequencies. As the eardrum vibrates, it pushes against a series of bones that transfer the vibrations into the fluid-filled inner ear. Just like the eardrum, if these bones are light, they can vibrate faster, which means better for high-frequency hearing. Heavy bones reduce high-frequency vibrations and favor hearing low-frequency sounds. Frequencies capable of being heard by humans, between 20 Hz and 20,000 Hz, are called audio or sonic. Higher frequencies are referred to as ultrasonic, and lower frequencies are known as infrasonic. Animals' hearing ranges can include sonic, ultrasonic, and infrasonic sounds. Echolocation is biological sonar used by animals to detect distant objects or objects in the dark. Animals that use this physiological mechanism emit calls out into their environment, then listen for the echoes that bounce back off the object. In other words, a creature makes a noise. The sound waves of that noise travel and eventually hit an object. The waves then bounce off the object and return to the creature as an echo. These returning waves allow the animal to locate the object and oftentimes even determine its size, distance, and shape by analyzing the echo's frequency and time delay. Echolocation is essentially a different form of vision and often replaces the sense of vision when it is impaired, like in the darkness or murky water. For animals that use it, echolocation is a tool necessary for survival, aiding in basic navigation, hunt for food, and communication. Echolocation is used by only a handful of species on the planet, most notably bats and dolphins. All echolocating bats are nocturnal, spending their waking hours in the dark. To survive the absolute darkness, echolocation is necessary. Bats create sound in their larynx, then emit it from their mouths and noses. The sound bounces off objects and is received by bats' distinctly large ears. They are dependent on echolocation for navigation and food. They are able to determine what is in their path and an object's size, distance, direction, and motion. Furthermore, scientists have recently discovered bats have an innate ability to distinguish between land and water through echolocation of the ground. Dolphins, along with some other species of porpoises, use echolocation as well. From a membrane located near their blowholes, dolphins create click-like sounds.
Click sounds are very short in duration, between 40 and 70 microseconds, but they can be very, very loud, around 220 decibels for bottlenose dolphins. Dolphins usually produce clicks in a rapid series called a click train. These click trains can consist of hundreds, sometimes even thousands of clicks per second. Here is an example of a dolphin's echolocation click train. These click sounds contain very high frequencies, some of them well above the range of human hearing, above 120 kilohertz.
After those sound waves bounce off an object, tissues in the jawbone absorb the echo, then transfer it to the ears. Dolphins then analyze the sound waves of the echoes. Sound actually travels faster in water than it does in air, so echolocation is an extremely useful tool for porpoises to navigate and hunt. The deep and vast waters of the ocean make this tool especially useful, allowing dolphins to better see their environment. Even more so than other echolocating creatures, dolphins use this ability for socialization. Elephants primarily use infrasonic sound and can hear frequencies much lower than any human can, between 16 Hz and 12,000 Hz. They also have the ability to make low-frequency sounds, often referred to as rumbles. Rumbles are crucial to elephant survival because low-frequency sound waves travel farther than high-frequency sound waves. This allows for long-distance communication between herds of or individual elephants. It is believed that elephants can hear rumbles from up to 10 kilometers away.
So why do elephants have such deep voices? In a place like this, sound is smothered by the vegetation, and the only thing that gets through are low-frequency sounds. These elephant rumbles slice through the forest like a hot knife through butter. These long-distance trunk calls carry information several kilometers through the densest rainforest. And the forest elephants couldn't manage without them. They're forced to scatter far and wide to find enough food. So these rumbles in the jungle are the main way they can socialize and keep in touch.
Elephants use this type of communication for help in finding food, announcing readiness for mating, and keeping in touch with or finding a herd. As Joyce Pohl, zoologist and scientific director of the Savannah Elephant Vocalization Project and the Amboseli Elephant Research Project in Kenya explained, elephants live in a fission-fusion society, which means that close relatives frequently come together and split up again. Members of a family and bond group maintain contact with one another over distance by using contact calls. These powerful low-frequency calls are clearly meant to travel long distance. Additionally, elephants can hear or sense the vibrations of these calls through special receptors in their feet and trunks. In fact, prior to earthquakes and tsunamis, elephants can often sense the seismic waves traveling through the ground, essentially warning them of what is about to happen. There are hundreds of reports that before the 2004 tsunami hit Sri Lanka and India, elephants became uneasy or agitated, began to make a crying-like noise, then broke free from their handlers and ran to higher ground. This is essentially their sixth sense.
Over here! Over here! Come on! Closer! That's a little too close. Well, thanks for watching and listening. See ya! See ya!
Produced in association with the National Science Foundation.